All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. It looks like we have a truly cosmopolitan crowd here again, like we often do. So it's great to see everybody coming in at different times of the day and night to join our webinar. So thank you for joining, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk about getting ready to upgrade to the Washington, D.C. release. And to set expectations, this webinar is about how to do upgrades and best practices and that sort of thing. We're not going to be covering new features in the Washington, D.C. release. So if you thought that's what this webinar was about, you're welcome to hang on, but just to let you know, that's not what we're covering today. And also, we always have to make our safe harbor notice here. If there are any forward-looking statements made during this webinar, they are not promises or guarantees of future features or functionalities. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's take a quick look at the agenda here. So, of course, we'll do some introductions so you can get to know the panel that will be speaking today. I'll review the upgrade policy and help you understand upgrade entitlements and how to manage upgrades. And then we'll learn some leading practices. We'll lean in to find some great tips for successful upgrades from someone who's been out in the field. And then we have some demos of some features in the platform that can help you with your upgrades. And of course, we won't leave you without some resources and tools that can help you with your upgrade. And then we'll move into our Q&A. And I really encourage you, if you have questions, to go ahead and post those in the Q&A. And please don't put those in the chat, because we will manage the Q&A throughout the webinar and answer questions if we can right away, and save the other ones for the end. And if we put them in the chat, sometimes they kind of get garbled and we don't get around, we miss some of them. So please make sure that you put those in the Q&A tool. So thanks for that. All right, so let's get started and meet our speakers. My name's Brita Koch, and I'll be your host today. I've been with ServiceNow for about 14 and a half years. And prior to that was a ServiceNow customer admin. And I'm in a marketing role where we work on creating post-sales content to help customers with adoptions. So that's why I'm here today, to bring that experience to you. And our next guest is Dale. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. I work as a principal product success manager within the creative workflows, dealing with kind of really large implementations of App Engine Studio, App Engine Management Center, and just general kind of development studio.
All right, thanks. And Paige, how about you?
Hey, Britta, real quick, I don't think we can see your deck before. Well, while I'm introducing myself. So I am Paige Steffi. I also am a product success manager like Dale and do very similar things. Been in the ecosystem for about 13 years, primarily as a customer, until about a year and a half ago when I joined ServiceNow.
All right, so that's our panel. Can everybody see the deck now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so the first thing we want to tackle today is a little bit about the upgrades and how to stay in compliance with our upgrade policy. So at ServiceNow, we have what we call an N-2 compliance. And so what that means is that you don't want to be any more than 2 releases behind. So how that works is as soon as Washington goes generally available in March, that will be considered our N release. And then at that point, Vancouver becomes N-1 and Utah is N-2. And then Tokyo is N-3, which means it's at end of life. And we want to get you off of that version as quickly as possible, because when you are on an instance that is no longer supported, obviously we can still provide you with some technical support, but there will be no further app patches or hot fixes to that. There's no service level agreements associated with it, and we don't take any liability for any issues that might happen, including security issues. And then last but not least, you could be forced into an emergency upgrade because there's some kind of security breach that we need to take care of immediately. So that's probably not a place you want to be in. And today we're going to talk about how to do the upgrade, so hopefully you don't have to worry about being there. So before we go and get into our content, I have a poll here for you. And this is, what release are you currently on? So we can kind of get a feel for where you are. If you're on Tokyo, Utah, Vancouver, Washington, or maybe you're not sure. And I hope there's nobody in that last section, but you never know. So it looks like Utah's trending here pretty well. Glad to see that the Tokyo is very much the minority. So most of you don't look like you'll be going into the end of life. And it looks like we have an early adopter person who has early available access and is already on Washington, D.C. So we'll just let that run for another couple seconds here. Because it looks like we've gotten, most of the folks have responded. So just another second or two here to get your responses in there. All right. So let's, looks like our majority here is in Utah, with Vancouver running a close second. So glad you're all here and that you're going to learn how to get into the right version. All right. So let me get started here with the first topic, which is understanding, managing, and planning your upgrades. So first, I want to kind of explain our release process. Most of you may know that we have family releases that come out on the first and third quarter of the year. And those are our releases that have the city names. And obviously, we're getting near the end of the alphabet, so I'm not really sure what's happening after Z, but we'll see what happens. And then those releases, they'll get monthly patches that will come out to keep them up to date and, you know, add things as they're going along. And then we have the other release types, which are the end of life upgrades, for instance. So if you are on the Tokyo release, we would put you into what's called our end of life program. I know it sounds kind of scary, to get you upgraded to a current release. And then we also have other patches, security updates, and hot fixes that'll come out periodically. And then last but not least, we do also have store releases, and those are released to our ServiceNow store. And just like the app store for Apple, you know, we have applications out there that are written by people in our ecosystem as well as our own. And so you can filter out to see the ServiceNow only apps that are out there. And some of those are upgraded on a quarterly basis. And then sometimes they're rolled into a family release and sometimes not. So if you're interested in a store app, just make sure you read it carefully so you know exactly what you're getting into with that. All right, so let's talk about some upgrade resources that are available to you. And the first thing I want to talk about is the upgrade center that's in your instance that you can manage yourself. And as you see here from the screenshot from Product Docs, you can go into Product Docs and learn a lot about the Upgrade Center and what's entailed in that. And we also have some YouTube videos available as well on our YouTube channel. So the Upgrade Center consists of three major pieces, and that would be the upgrade plans, the upgrade previews, and the upgrade monitor. So the upgrade plan is where you can record all the steps that you would normally do manually after an upgrade. For instance, installing plugins or update sets or resetting an integration or something like that. You record that, and then you just replay that, and those updates are done automatically for you. And why is this helpful? Because many of you have probably been using a checklist in the past and you're saying, well, that's working pretty good. Well, I was with a customer once and we had the checklist, and the checklist was great, but the admin forgot to do the very first step. And we spent a whole day on a conference call, unfortunately, which happened to be Mother's Day, troubleshooting the issue. And then at the end of the day, we figured out that he had just forgotten the first step. So using the upgrade plan can help you avoid situations like that. The next piece is the upgrade preview, which Paige will talk a lot about later on. And it's also a really powerful tool that will help you preview what will happen when an upgrade is applied to your instance. And so you can figure out what conflicts or issues might come up and what remediations that you would want to make prior to taking the upgrade, so there's no surprises or gotchas. And then last but not least, there's the upgrade monitor. And I call this the Santa tracker for your ServiceNow upgrade. So it's going to show you the progress of your upgrade live as it's happening. So there's just three major parts of the upgrade center that you would want to be aware of. And you can obviously go into Product Docs and read more about those. The other place where we have a lot of resources available to you is right in Now Support. So when you log in with your admin credentials, you'll be able to navigate to the instances and see the list of instances associated with your organization. And you'll see the status of this, what version it's on, if it's in any kind of end-of-life program, if there's changes scheduled for it. And you can also use the actions button there to the right if you want to schedule an immediate upgrade or patch that you want to happen there. And then if you drill into the instance individually, you can see really detailed instant information about that instance, such as the IP address, what plugins are installed, and more detail about the changes that are scheduled for that instance. So that's right there in Now Support. And so another thing I want to explain that I hope will be helpful is about our upgrade and patching timeline. So ServiceNow has instituted scheduled patches and upgrades. And so if you go out there to self-schedule a patch upgrade, you may find that one's already been scheduled and you'd be like, oh, how did that happen? Well, that's because we're doing it automatically, because we have these patches that come out on the first month of a quarter. And then there's hot fixes or other security fixes that'll come out that are associated with that patch. So you might have Vancouver patch 4 come out in January, and then in February you would have Vancouver patch 4 hotfix 2A, 2B, etc. So that's what's happening there. And we try to auto schedule. I shouldn't say try. We do automatically schedule those for you. And the thing about ServiceNow schedule changes is that you are not able to cancel those. You should be able to reschedule them in most instances, but we're not able to allow you to reschedule those or cancel those, sorry. And then also in those schedule changes, you may find if you are at that end of life situation that we will schedule an upgrade for you. And in that situation, we'll give you 90 days to prepare for that upgrade before it gets applied. And then obviously we only apply that to your subprods. And then you have 14 days to review on your subprods and make any remediations that you need to do before you take the final upgrade. So that's a little bit of overview of how those pre-scheduled changes work. And sometimes you may find that you're in more than one of those pre-scheduled changes programs at once, or you may find that because we do base that on the version that you're on at the time those changes are scheduled, you may find you're not in the programs that you thought you were. So just take a look at that and evaluate that before you have a panic attack on any of that. Because we're really trying to make it easier for you so that you can manage those. You don't have to go in there and manage all those upgrades yourself. All right, so let's talk a little bit about if you're self-scheduling upgrades, which is obviously your preference, right? Because you're running a business or an organization and you may have specific times of the year that aren't good for you. And so it's always best to schedule these upgrades on your own terms and have your plan in place and do your preparation. So if this is on the Now Support portal, you can go in here and you can schedule the changes and you can see the different options that are available that you need to look at. Now, when you do a self-scheduled change, you can cancel those and you can normally reschedule those or retarget those. The only thing is that you'll need to do that at least 2 hours before that scheduled change is going to occur. And if you schedule a self change that brings you up to a more current patch or more current version, the automated changes will be automatically deleted so that because you've already superseded those, so you don't need those anymore. So the system already allows for that. So it's really a pretty cool system with a lot of automation built into it. And I promise I'm not going to be talking forever because I feel like I am. So one other thing, when you're managing the upgrades, we have a few common questions that come up. And sometimes people are like, well, the rescheduling is not available for me. And because we do have this very complex change calendar with a conflict detection, there are certain times when rescheduling is not available because there's just not a time available for you to do that. Or it may be some kind of an emergency patch that it's non-negotiable. Another common question that we have are maybe some certain times are unavailable. And as you know, we have all of these instances in a data center, and there's obviously activities going on in that data center that are both ServiceNow related or customer related. And so again, that conflict detector will only schedule times where it's good availability for those changes to occur. So if a time isn't available for you, we can't make an allowance to change that because obviously one person changing could set off a whole chain of reaction of other changes getting out of whack. So, you just have to try to schedule another time that is closest to the one that you wanted. And last but not least, if you put in your change for a patch upgrade or an upgrade, and you have questions or you need to adjust it in some way, Normally you might think, oh, I need to log a now support ticket. But in this case, because you've logged a change and because we have a specialized team that manages those changes, we ask that you make any of those updates in the change record directly and do not open a case, because the regular support team isn't as well versed in all of the things that the change team are. And so it will actually take longer for you to get your situation resolved if you log the now support ticket as opposed to just putting that right in your change ticket. Yeah. Okay, so we got through all of that. Hopefully that was a little more clear than mud. If not, you can go to our community to get more information, or you can go to the Now Support portal and get more information there as well. And as you're doing the poll, I'll kind of explain, you can go to troubleshooting and support on the Now Support portal, and you can find information about upgrades there, as well as our known error portal. So you can also check that out and make sure that there aren't any known errors that are going to affect you when you go to take a release. So let's watch these poll results start coming in here.
Real quick, while everyone's answering the poll, I did want to clarify one point.
Yes.
Our slides, and there were several questions that came in around what versions we support, whether that's N-2 or N-1. I think some of the slides say N-2 and reference N-3. The policy is actually N-1 now. That has changed, and that's probably why it's a little confusing. But I did provide a link to a KB article out on support that spells that out pretty clearly. So it is N-1.
All right, thank you, Paige.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got about 73 people in, 73%. So it looks like everybody's weighed in on the poll. So it looks like the we upgrade once a year looks like the most popular, followed by close by general availability and waiting for a specific patch. Couple people unsure and a few in the early availability program. And another thing you can do when you're on the Now Support portal, we have a service catalog out there called the Automation Center. And that's where you can sign up if you want to be in the early availability program, where you will get access to our most recent release a month before it goes into general availability. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end that poll, and we're going to go to our next speaker, which is Dale Dunkerley. Thank you for joining us, Dale.
Hi.
He's going to talk to us about leading practices. So take it away, Dale.
Sure. Well, we're really going to kind of talk about kind of ServiceNow governance, right? And governance is a interesting topic because I know most enterprise organizations have them, and is really just the backbone of an organization, providing a solid framework for kind of decision making and basically aligning to the organization's mission and strategic objectives. It's all about establishing rules, processes, and structures for an effective management and control of them. One of the most and coolest thing that governance does is create a structure that outlines the responsibilities, roles, and relationships among the key stakeholders as well. This way, everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and who's in charge. And it promotes a transparency and accountability and clear lines of authority within all of it. But governance isn't all about telling people what to do. It also helps manage risks by identifying and assessing potential obstacles that get in the way of organizational objectives. By implementing risk management frameworks and processes, governance also ensures everyone's on the same page and works together to protect the organization's interests. Another big part of governance is making sure everyone follows the rules, is in compliance with laws, regulations, industry standards, and is crucial to maintaining stakeholders' trust and minimizing any legal consequences. Governance also informs everyone of legal requirements and ensures adherence by implementing those policies and procedures that are very important.
Yeah, you make a really compelling argument for governance, and I like how you break it down into the different boards there. Yep. Yeah, so how is this not all about just procedures and rules? Because you did say there was a lot of procedures and rules associated with this.
Well, that's a good question, right? Governance usually kind of comes up with the policies and processes that everybody likes to work with, but it also oversees things like resource allocations and things like budgeting, management, and any financial processes are required within the particular areas that need them. This ensures that everyone's got the resources efficiently and effectively to support the organization's strategic goals. And another part of it is stakeholder engagement. It established mechanism for involving those stakeholders in the decisions themselves, fostering those relationships and considering any diverse perspectives that everybody might have and their priorities. This way, everyone feels heard and valued. And last, governance monitors and evaluates upgrade performance by implementing mechanisms to measure progress, track performance indicators, and also conduct regular assessments. This enables informed decision-making and drive success, organizational success. In a nutshell, governance provides a good framework for decision-making, managing risks, ensuring compliance, and overseeing resource allocation, as well as engaging the stakeholders while looking at the organizational performance. So it's a pretty tough job, ultimately. And really what you want to be doing is trying to find that effective management to achieve what you need to have with any type of either project or upgrade.
100%. And I think, that stakeholder involvement is so critical. And sometimes people think they can skip that because it'll go faster, but it usually ends up taking longer if they do that.
Without a doubt, you really
yeah.
you really do struggle with it, right? If you don't have the right people at the right time, essentially you do have a bit of a struggle to kind of get everybody involved. And if you involve people too late, you do get that kind of, well, why wasn't I here and why wasn't I informed? Can't tell you how many times we've had that type of conversation. But, there's other kind of challenges that come with it, right? Budgetary constraints, as I was talking about earlier. But we need to prioritize the funding, the managing of the costs, because let's face it, a lot of customers do upgrades not just by themselves, but with partners and with other finance. So they need that financial support from the governance that they have. But technical compatibility, should I say, integration can also pose hurdles during upgrades. But governance will get that covered as well. But overseeing the technical assessments and coordinating collaboration between all of the different areas and some effective project management, governance helps to address any compatibility issues and hopefully minimize as much disruption as possible. I mean, other things that they try to look after is data migration. That's generally across everybody and can be complex tasks during upgrades, but governance does make it easier by facilitating those data migration strategies or even other data management protocols and ensuring comprehensive testing and validation will make sure you have the correct data integrity. Stakeholder alignment and communication are critical for these particular upgrades, and governance ensures that everyone is on the same page and establishing really good, effective communication channels and providing regular updates to those stakeholders to promote that collaboration and try and smooth out that upgrade process as best as possible.
Yeah. Ugh, so much to think about, right?
It is.
And then, of course, everybody's always thinking about risks with upgrades because, and how do you manage that?
Well, upgrades do introduce potential risks. There's no two ways around it, right? Ultimately, you're upgrading entire platforms and sometimes entire structures inside plugins and inside different table areas. But governance in general at a high level ensures that risk management and any security measures are in place throughout that process, where they can take on risk assessments, do some security protocols, do some vulnerability monitoring, put some governance safeguards for the organizational assets that are key to the platform's operational. They can really look after what is essential to be working on the platform to make sure that everything is working for everybody. I mean, hopefully you can see now how governance is essential for managing those complex upgrades and addressing any resistance to change or having budgetary constraints that need to be navigated or technical capabilities or data management. Stakeholder management and communication, again, I'll reiterate, is key to all of that to make sure that everybody's happy. And ensuring that risk management, it's vital. Governance helps organizations to do that regularly.
Yeah, and I know a lot of companies are like, well, I don't have time to do governance. I don't have time to document these things, but my response would be, you don't have time not to. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even the littlest amount of governance is key to all of this, right? You need to make sure that you are running some sort of level of governance across your platform. Even if you've got sort of one level of kind of, how do I put this, one plugin, one area that you're doing, it's needed. But the minute you go to more than one, say you've got ITSM, HR, CSM, even if you've got more than one, you can definitely work with that. And planning and preparing those upgrades can be complex, but governance will make that easier. with governance, everybody knows the real roles and responsibilities and how the decisions are made. But this also keeps everyone accountable as well, ensures that everyone works together to get that same goal, to get upgraded as quickly and easily and simply as possible. Because governance will also set the standard and policies that are used around all parts of the organization. This helps them keep things consistent as much as it possibly can be, and also flexible to whoever actually is having the particular issue. Helps everyone get the resources like money, people, jobs, technology. Yeah. We need to make sure we keep that thing. But one of the most important things, the governance, as you've already read today, is help manage risks. This means everything, things like cultural differences, laws, technology issues, coming up ways with different problems and minimizing those as much as possible. I mean, communication is key during those upgrades, or else everybody doesn't know when you're going to upgrade, how you're going to upgrade, and whether you need to test for certain upgrades, or whether even an upgrade can take place due to, maybe certain priorities of the organization. I've experienced that myself, to be honest. Governance also ensures that everyone follows those rules and regulations in their regions, and there's nothing to worry about as part of doing that.
And you're not passionate about this topic at all, right, Dale?
No, definitely not, as you can tell, right? Something I've spent many years doing, actually, to be honest. I worked for ServiceNow for a very, very long time. I also was part of the partner ecosystem, but I also was a customer for a fair amount of years before rejoining ServiceNow. So I've been around quite a lot in terms of knowing all of the different facets that kind of make up implementations of ServiceNow, and run quite a few of them myself. And the key thing I've always come back down to is governance is key. The larger the organization and the bigger the implementation on the platform, the more critical it is to actually have that governance in place.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, thank you, Dale. I appreciate your passion and all of the information you brought to us today.
No problem at all.
Our next guest is the inimitable Paige Duffy. Hi, Paige.
Hey, Britta. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tips for a successful upgrade. And most of this comes from my own experience. So,
well, let's start with your first tip.
Yeah. So the first thing is to limit your scope. And so what does this mean? When we're limiting our scope, we're looking to reduce risk. And we do that by really resisting the urge to activate new plugins or applications. So with Washington, I know there are a lot of really cool things that are coming out. I have found that if you delay, even by a week, turning on all those new shiny things and separating them from your upgrade, you're reducing that risk to the upgrade. Because it never fails that when you turn on something new like that, there are issues or people don't understand how it works. And that starts to reflect on your upgrade itself instead of bucketing those things out. This can also mean that you perhaps delay your normal upgrade release or your normal release. So if you release on a cycle, say once a week, maybe for that week of your upgrade, instead of having your normal release, you delay that a few days or a week. So again, we're just creating that separation between our upgrade and our normal release cycle. But really the idea here is to focus on just having a pleasant upgrade experience. So make the upgrade about the upgrade, focus on the upgrade, and hopefully you'll find that you have far less things like incidents or defects that come through, and you're just creating that really pleasant experience where hopefully your customers don't even notice that you've upgraded.
Yeah, that would be the best case scenario, right?
Yep.
All right.
But that does not mean we don't communicate. We'll cover that later, but
yeah, communication is a common theme, I think, for today. So your next tip is around setting expectations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so definitely that kind of leads into what I just said about communications. So when we're setting expectations, if we can advance to the next slide.
Sorry.
No worries. Again, we're communicating clearly. So we're communicating to our stakeholders. We're letting them know when we're doing different things. We're being very transparent about what we're doing. So we're not just telling people, hey, we're upgrading. We're also maybe telling them what that whole timeline looks like. So when we're upgrading our sub-prods, if they have some sort of interest in our sub-production, when we're allowing them to test, when we're closing down the testing window, all of that communication should be very, very clear. It also allows you to set expectations. We are not turning on any new plugins for this upgrade. Here's the timeline in which we can start turning on new plugins. You're also telling them as they're testing how they're going to report defects. You're making it very clear what that process is so that they know what they need to do, what instance they need to go into, how they need to do the testing, how they need to report the defects so that you can prioritize those correctly and get them fixed before your upgrade. And then lastly, present them with a go live schedule. Let them know what the go live date looks like. So the day of your actual upgrade, at this time in the morning, we're going to do a clone down of prod. And I think I've got an example on a later slide. But then once the upgrade starts at this time, here's what you can expect. It should take about 3 to 5 hours. And then once that's done, we'll open it for, production testing, etc. So just making all of those timelines super, super clear to your stakeholders.
That's awesome. Setting expectations can really make or break an experience. So next up, you have a tip about reducing upgrade time. I'm guessing a lot of people are going to be interested in this topic.
Probably. And again, a lot of this really comes from my own experience with upgrades and, noticing an exceedingly long upgrade window. So kind of the first step to that, though, is understanding how long your upgrade is actually going to take. Whenever you are upgrading one of your subprod instances, you can do it in such a way that you get a pretty good general idea of how long that's actually going to take on your production instance. It's not going to be exact because they are different instances, but by doing something that we call, a full clone or an audit clone, you can make it more closely resemble your production instance. And so we do this by, as you can see on the image, including your audit and your log data and including your attachment data. So your instance should look pretty similar to production, should be a pretty similar size. It's about as close as you can get with an actual clone. And then once it's done, you can see how long that actually took. And then here in a second, we'll talk about ways that you can, reduce that time. So here is an image. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Just lots of good stuff here. So you're on a roll.
So here is an image of the upgrade center. Once your upgrade has been completed in your sub-production instance, you can find a lot of really good information in your upgrade center. We're really focusing on the duration items at the bottom. So the schemas change by duration and then the top 10 plugins by duration. You can also continue to see more than just 10, but it's going to show you those top 10. This helps you to identify the things that are taking the longest. And for me, what I have found is that sometimes you can use that information to mitigate some of that upgrade length. In my past, we had an upgrade that was taking significantly longer than any of our other upgrades had in our sub-production instance. And I started diving into it, and there were a bunch of plugins that were being activated as part of that upgrade that we could go ahead and activate. And by doing that, we shaved off about an hour and a half of our upgrade time. So that's one of the ways that you can really reduce that upgrade time.
All right. And I think you have a bonus for us here for some people.
I do. So my last suggestion, if you can do it, there's some caveat to this, is to back up production. And what I mean by this is prior to your upgrade, we usually would do it the day of, but prior to your upgrade, take and schedule for a full backup of your production instance down to a sub-production instance. This really only works if you have several sub-production instances. If you have kind of a 3-instance pipeline, this may not work for you, but if you have one that you can leave and set for a couple of weeks, this is great to have. The primary use that I have found for this is that when issues are reported, I can confirm whether or not that issue that's being reported is related to the upgrade or if it's something that already existed in production. That doesn't mean we don't want to fix it, but it helps us to prioritize things. We want to prioritize issues that were caused by the upgrade that are new versus issues that have maybe existed for months that nobody noticed or reported because they weren't paying as much attention. We all know that after an upgrade, people tend to pay more attention to what's going on. So again, it really helps us to prioritize those true upgrade defects.
Yeah, that's really important because people do put a microscope on things after you do an upgrade. All right, and then I think you've got a timeline example here that you can walk us through.
Yep. So this is just a very high level example of kind of an upgrade timeline. So from the start of upgrading your subprod all the way to actually going live. So as you can see here, we start with performing that full audit clone, we schedule our upgrade, we start to remediate skip changes, and it's really important. You need to remediate those skip changes. We review our upgrade summary. We look at store apps and plugins that need to be updated. So not new ones that we want to install, but things that need to be updated as part of the upgrade. And we also start to see ways that we could potentially shorten that window if we need to. Then we start testing. That may be ATF, that may be manual testing, it may be both. And in the week of the upgrade, like I said, we clone down production into a sub prod that we can leave sitting there. I forgot to mention this. Usually about 2 weeks is a good timeline for this though. Then we actually upgrade. Once you're upgraded, have a plan for post-upgrade support. So now that we've upgraded, maybe the team's going to be on a call the next morning for 4 hours, just in case there's any major issues. Just have a plan for that. And then after that, we go back to business as usual. You can release that production instance back into your normal pipeline, or sub-production instance, sorry, back into your normal pipeline. You can start doing releases again and turn on all the fancy new features that you want.
And that's really great. I'm hoping everybody on the call can find this helpful, because people are usually looking for advice or something around the timeline. So this is really great that you've got this all kind of mapped out here. And then I know you do have this one last slide of your summarizing your tips.
Right. This is really just for anyone that wants to take a quick screenshot, as it's been mentioned several times in the chat. You'll also be able to have these slides afterwards, but I found it really nice to just have a quick summary of what I talked about. So
yep, 100%. The TLDR. Okay, so thank you, Paige. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We have one last poll before we introduce our last speaker, and this is: do you use ATF, which Paige just basically recently mentioned. So if you don't know what that stands for, I guess you're going to take option A. And then we have B, we use ATF. C, we use it with Test Generator. Or D, we use it with Cloud Runner and Test Generator. So got some good results coming in or here about people using ATF, but it looks like we have a fair amount of the audience that's not aware of it. So hopefully we can give you some takeaways here that'll help you learn more about that. And we have a couple of, folks that are using the Test Generator and the Cloud Runner and the Test Generator, which is awesome. All right, so I guess there's some coming in the chat here too, is they're not using. So yeah, that is another option that we could have probably included on here. All right, so we've got, let's see, pretty good participation here. It looks like the responses have slowed down. So let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the presentation here. So what we're going to do here now is I'm going to turn it over to Olenka. And if you'll just give us a moment here, he's going to provide some videos with some demos of some of these platform tools here. And so we're just going to take a second here to change the screen share.
Okay. All right. So
starting here from my instance homepage, I'm going to navigate to the ATF test module. I'm going to click the new button to create a new test, and I'm going to go ahead and call it whatever I like. From here, we'll arrive at the standard ATF test form. I'm going to go ahead and add some test steps. So we'll click add a test step. And what I want to do is I want to open an incident form in Service Operations Workspace. So we'll start by searching for the open a new form step. Going to click next. Now here is probably the most important part of this demo, which is the ability to choose from different workspaces or different versions of the platform UI. By default, we have selected here in Form UI Standard UI, which basically refers to any pre-next UI experience interface, sometimes called UI 16 also. Now in this case, I actually want to choose Service Operations Workspace. You can also note that there are other workspaces available here to select from. And for table, I'm going to go ahead and put incident. Then I'll submit to create the step, and we can see the step has been added to the test. I'm going to go ahead and add a second one, and now I want to fill out this form. And so the step to do that is set field values. Note that the mandatory fields have already been populated. I'm going to go ahead and just fill these out with any value just for demo purposes. Finally, one more step here. I want to submit my form. I'm going to click submit a form. I'm going to confirm that the step will assert that the form is submitted to server successfully. You may notice that in the subsequent steps, this field is already filled out. We actually filled out using the value from the prior step, which means if you set it to a workspace in the first step, you can expect that all subsequent steps are going to automatically have this populated to the matching value as the first step. From here, after my form has been filled out and submitted, I want to click a UI action. And what we're going to do is we're going to click the assign to me action. And what this does is it's going to assign the incident to my active user, which in this case, because this is kind of a trivial test, is just going to be system administrator. So I'm going to go ahead and select assign to me. When selecting UI actions, make sure that you choose one that's relevant for what you're testing. So in this case, this is a service operation workspace version of this action. I'll submit this step. And finally, I'm going to do one final step, which is do a field values validation to assert that the assigned to value on the form is set to my current user, which is system administrator. So from here, we can go ahead and click run tests to bring up our browser picker. And in this case, I'm just going to run the test locally. And what we're going to see is we're going to see the incident form opened up in service operations workspace. We will see it populate short description and caller. We're going to see it submit. And finally, we will click the assign to me button and validate that it is assigned to system administrator. And it actually goes pretty fast. And going back to our test form, we can see that the step or that the test did indeed succeed.
Yeah, so that was the demo for configurable workspace coming up in Washington. Then the next demo would be about performance testing, which we're expecting you guys to start using.
It's a quick demo of the performance testing tool in ATF coming up in the Washington release. So here I have a demo instance running Washington release. The main focus of the tool is to help customers find performance regressions, especially earlier in their development cycle. A lot of times, performance is an afterthought when doing development, and a lot of the issues arise once they hit production. So this tool aims to help customers find those regressions sooner in their development cycle, making use of all the great things that ATF offers already. Go ahead and click Cloud Runner and accept the acknowledgement that we will be pausing the instance for the duration of the test. This is going to happen if you run a test, a suite, or a schedule. So it's the same for all type of performance tests. When I hit run test, the instance will pause and it will give a 10-minute cooldown period to allow any jobs to finish executing, and also to allow the memory and the instance to go back to a steady state before starting the tests. I have disabled that for demo purposes for now, but in a actual instance, that would be the case. So once you hit run test, we issue a system pause and we wait for a cooldown of 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and click run. You'll see a total of 11 runs in here. So the very first one is a warm-up run and 10 sequential runs. So all of these execute sequentially. Actually, the warm-up run is so that we do any server-side caching, so that we warm up the cache basically on the server side, so that the actual runs run through 1 through 10 have a better cache localization. And again, this is all in efforts to stabilize the results. So I'm going to let this run, but I'm going to skip forward in the video so that we get to the result. This run is done here. Again, just to recap, we paused the system. We waited for about 10 minutes for the instance to cool down, for the cooling period, basically. Now we ran one warm-up, and 10 runs. So all these execute sequentially, and now we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and click go to result. And this is going to take me to a new table introduced with this feature. This is called a performance run table. Very simple table. It basically just acts as a container for all our runs here. So we have a total of 11 runs. You can see this one's marked as a warm-up and the step results here. Now you'll see a button right here and a link as well as here to the UI actions to compare the performance results. So this is the part where it's the most customers. So once we have performance runs and we want to compare them, I can go ahead and do that. So I can compare a test against another test, right? So the same test. Or I can also compare a suite versus a suite, or a suite against a test, as long as that test also exists in the suite. So for this demo, I'm just going to compare it to a previous run that I had done. So I'm going to click here. You're prompted with this modal here. I'm going to select it from the same test right here. So I'm going to select from test, but a previous run that I had done for basic UI tests. I'll go ahead and click that, and I'm going to click OK. Now this is going to take me to this new form called performance comparison. So once you have multiple runs, you can always navigate to the run and to the performance run and click the compare button. But you can also find that under performance profiling in ATF, you'll see basically an entry for both of those new two tables. So the performance runs themselves or a performance comparison. So you can also create a performance comparison by just clicking new here and selecting your runs. But from a UX perspective, it's probably easier if you're already in a performance run to just hit that.
All right. So for the folks that don't use ATF, you can actually see some of the benefits you get for using our own testing platform before you do your upgrades. Grace, I think that's all for the demo.
Okay, thank you. I will take the screen share back here. All right. So thank you for that, Olinka. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I know most of the time demos are the best part of the webinars. So let's review a couple of key takeaways, and I'll review some resources that you'll be getting in the deck that we'll be sending out, and then we'll open up for Q&A. And I'll try to get through this pretty quickly here because I know we are getting up on time. So there's a couple, the key takeaways here summarized. Again, I don't need to read this to you. This is another one of those slides that if you want to take a screenshot just to get a quick summary, that's maybe something you want to do. And you can also, obviously, this will be in the deck that we send out. Also, I want to bring your attention to the Washington, D.C. release upgrade kit, which will be available in March when Washington, D.C. goes generally available. And what you can find in that is a summary of each of the products and what the updates are to them, including anything about artificial intelligence. And then we'll also have a summary of all the artificial intelligence things blocked together. So you can see it in two different ways. One, just the AI stuff together, and one, the AI, how it's embedded into each individual product. And it's also localized in a couple of different languages. We have it available in English, Japanese, and Korean currently, and potentially be moving that into some additional languages in the future. And you can also find, the plan your upgrade out here and some other resources. And then also, you probably want to go out to this page and subscribe, because then you'll see any updates of new information that are coming out to the releases and upgrades page. All right, so these are some resources that are available to you. Obviously, I don't anticipate that you're going to be able to try to figure out what all these are. This will, again, be included in the deck that you receive. I do just want to call out one thing here. If you happen to be a customer who has purchased our Impact product, we have a couple of accelerators that you may find to be useful when you're doing an upgrade. So there's a Jumpstart Your Upgrade, and there's also, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. There's a Jumpstart Your Automated Testing. So those are available to you if you're an Impact customer, and so you may want to talk to your squad for more information about those. All right, and then don't forget to join us at future community events. There will be events that are based on product upgrades or changes that'll be happening the last week of March and the first week of April. So, make sure you go out to our Live on ServiceNow events page on the community and register for any of those events that are going to be of interest to you. All right, and now for the long-awaited Q&A. So we're going to take a second here to review some questions, and we'll start with if Paige or Dale or Oliak, if you have one you want to start with, feel free. Also, I want to apologize again for having the wrong information about the end of life. Excuse me. So it is N-1 going forward, and I'll make sure that those slides get updated before they get sent out. So do we have any questions here that anybody wants to take on?
There seems to be a common theme. I'll take one on this one around
right.
plugins and upgrades, because obviously we do have quite a lot of, family-based releases, but we also have a lot of plugins that are store-based that kind of come through. And there's a couple of good, different kind of good practices that people are either suggesting or sharing on there as well around upgrading certain plugins before you do an upgrade. But I always think that's a great idea to do, but some upgrades are also dependent on certain versions of families to come out. Like, we do certify all of the plugins according to kind of the families that they're on. Now, as part of the early adopters program and as going through to GA, any ServiceNow particular plugin will be certified for the family release before it comes out, but there is a bit of a road to kind of get there. And I appreciate there's also quite a lot of plugins that probably a lot of people are using, but ultimately, we're trying to make some improvements around plugins, around making it simpler and easier for people to kind of upgrade all of their plugins at the same time. It's not perfect at the moment, we understand that, but there's also, we do have the backlog facilities where you can kind of order or, have them upgrading in the background in order for you to run them. So you're not having to go in and test them all the time. But due to the nature of plugins, in the fact that they're changing themselves underneath that, we can't kind of just say upgrade all the plugins the minute you do an upgrade to a particular family version, because we just don't know what unpredictability that will bring into your system, and we want to make it as stable as possible.
All right, thank you, Dale. I do see there's some questions here about the upgrade plans. Unfortunately, I don't think we have an expert on the panel here today that can help with those questions. So if you want to provide your email information, if you have questions about the upgrade plans, I can track down the appropriate person to get back to you. We have a question here from Rajesh Shakar. We signed up for the early release program. If we upgrade to Washington as part of this release program, how is this different from general availability? When DC is generally available, should we run another upgrade wherever we upgraded? So what happens when you're in the early release program, you do get a version a month ahead of the generally available release. So, and then when the generally available release comes out, you can go in and schedule the upgrade for that, because you'll want to get off the EA and onto the GA once that becomes available. Is there anybody else who wants to add any color on that one? All right. Alicia had a question here about how we set up rules for auto schedule changes only happening on weekends. We recently had a patch with a 2-hour outage that was implemented on a Monday morning. My best suggestion for that would be to make sure that you're monitoring your automatically scheduled changes, and then you can request a time change for those. And then you could also put a comment in the change and ask the Now support team how you can get this set up so that this doesn't continue to happen. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get someone from Now support to join today, so that's I'm not able to give you a better answer than that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Is there any other questions anybody else wants to take, as I'm just going to scroll through here and kind of go through them?
I'm also scrolling through them. There are quite a few. There was one more question around what N-1 means from Marcus. So does that mean you can never skip one release to be 100% supported, no grace period? For example, if I'm on Vancouver and wait for Xanadu, the day Xanadu GA is released, but Vancouver is no longer supported and I'm out of support. So I really recommend that KB article, and I can find that link again, but it covers all of that in pretty good detail. Technically speaking, yes, the moment that Xanadu is GA, those other versions are not under support, but it's not like we instantly upgrade you the moment that GA is available. There's a lot of notifications that come through. And again, that KB article provides you all the timelines. So, and just another point of clarification, that might also be different depending on your contract. So if you're hearing me say N-1 and you're like, whoa, that's not what my contract says. If you're in doubt, ask your account manager. They're going to have a better sense of what your specific contract is. But the general policy is just N-1. So unless you have it specified in your contract, it should be
Or
N-1.
if you were a customer before we went to that policy.
Implementation.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Um,
generally the older contracts.
Paige,
But
I think
even if you have N-2, so even if you have N-2,
Yeah.
we still recommend N-1. You want to get the latest features, the latest everything that's in there. The contract's the contract, but there's a reason why we are so encouraging of N-1 and getting you to upgrade. The more often you upgrade, the easier the upgrades are. And if you have built out your ATF tests and you have a plan, it's not as painful. When you only do it once a year, it hurts because nobody remembers how to do it. But if we get into the practice of doing our store releases, the quarterly store releases to get new features there, to do our normal patching, we're doing our normal, we're going through this process every time we're releasing some internal change as a customer, it gets easier. It gets easier. And so that's why we recommend that. That's why we have modified our new contracts going forward, or our new contracts are N-1, because it's a really good thing to do. It's not arbitrary, a lot of thought behind it, and benefit for our customers.
Yeah, when you get into that rinse, lather, repeat cycle, it gets easier. Paige, I think this is a good question for you. Is it good to upgrade during your regular sprint cycle?
I mean, that varies. At my previous location, we typically did our upgrades on our normal release window. So we released every Wednesday. That kind of went along with our sprint cycle. It's just for those Wednesday releases, we would delay our normal release that would have occurred on that Wednesday. So we were still doing our normal sprint work, and then kind of the upgrade work was going along in parallel. You may find that doesn't work. It depends on how large your dev team is. It depends on how many instances you have. There's a lot of dependencies there that may make it different for your organization.
Now, Adam, since you jumped on, this might be one that you could address. Are you considering a solution to automate plugin upgrades related to the ServiceNow store? With Vancouver, we had to manually upgrade 100 plugins, which is tedious work, and that takes half a day to perform since they were only done by one person.
So there's a couple things to do there. One, the next time I see the product manager of that, I'm going to upgrade their instance and make them sit down and upgrade every single one of those and make them feel that pain. I feel it too. Yes, I mean, we've always had to do that. That's how it's always worked. Not with the plugins, but the store apps. You've always had to upgrade one at a time as more moves into there. It's painful to get those upgrades. They do upgrade when you upgrade. It is going to pull up to the latest version, but to the latest supported version, the minimum version you need. But if you want the latest version, you're going to sit there for a while. There is a batch installer API. So a couple things. One, you can just schedule them so you don't have to sit there and wait and let it run. But two, if you're a little more adventurous right now, and even going back to Utah, at least Utah, maybe even a little bit before then, there's a batch install API where you can set it up yourself to just upgrade them all. I think there's a few community discussions about doing that. But absolutely, it's some pain. How do we make it simpler, smoother? I will add a note too. This is really important in Vancouver. I think this is where, when we went to the new application manager and it's showing the store things, we improve the speed of the app manager by running a job that pulls the list of all the store apps. Because before, when you pulled up the app manager, it was always going to get what's the latest. So we said earlier, we only release once a month. So that's a lot of checks and a lot of waiting that you don't need to do. So we have a job to do it. When you do an upgrade, when you go to the app manager, make sure the first thing you do is check the last sync time. And you're probably going to want to press the button to sync because it only gets a list of the latest store apps once a day. And so it could be, 23 hours and 59 minutes since you upgraded and still showing you the old versions, the only old stuff. So make sure when you do go to upgrade, once your upgrade completes, go to the app manager, press the sync button right away. It'll take a minute, get all those new versions, and then you can choose what you want to upgrade. And again, using the schedule is something I do today. How do I do an upgrade all? How do I have some multi-select? How do we make that a little bit easier to create a batch for you? Are all things we're talking about and figuring out how to make that happen without introducing just too much churn, and what that and how that works. So we're working on it. I feel your pain. I definitely feel your pain when I just upgraded to Washington and sat there for a while. So we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you, Adam. That's really helpful. We have another question here from Trent. Are there any resources available for sample testing plans? We have our own, but I'd love to see how others are managing it. And I was wondering if, Paige, you might have anything around that.
I apologize. I was answering the question. So I did not hear what you asked.
Right. Trent's asking if there's any resources available for sample testing plans.
I'm not necessarily aware of any. I mean, I know there's some like sample ATF plans out there, but general testing plans, I'm not really aware of any. Primarily because that's so unique from company to company. It's kind of hard to do a lot of generic plans.
Yeah. And Olinka, this one's for you. Mary is asking. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the sample plans, quick start test for ATF for your applications is the best example of that. On the automated side, if we already knew what the plan was, we'll automate it. And there are several hundred and maybe a few thousand quick start tests that walk you through all those things that test out of the box, and then you can modify them as needed, and then you retain them. So that's where we put our efforts and our product teams is to ship quick start tests. So make sure you look for whatever area you're installing, look for another app that sits with it with quick start tests. Sometimes they just ship in the app. Sometimes they're a separate plugin or separate store app. But take a look at those quick start tests. It'll explain what it does if you, for some reason, wanted to do it manually, but it's a great place to copy it and modify it for your needs.
And there's one other question here that is probably good for you, Adam. Is the ATF performance metrics store app going away?
I think Yinka was answering that, but my recollection of that is that Yinka can correct me, but I believe that was an Innovation Lab app actually put out by our IT team that was developing. It wasn't from our engineering team, and that the new version should replace that. That was an Innovation Lab app. It was a kind of a proof of concept. But what you want is the new performance testing that is releasing with Washington and uses Cloud Runner. The new version's much new and improved, and I do not know if there's anything that you used that's in the Innovation Lab one that we don't have. But the new one is certainly been more hardened, tested, and validated. So I would probably stop my use of the one Innovation Lab and start once I get to Washington and use the new performance testing built into ATF. That is the Innovation Lab one is not fully supported. That's why it's an Innovation Lab. It was something to take a look at. The new one is absolutely fully supported. It is part of ATF. It is part of the platform. If you have an issue, put a case in and we will address it.
Yeah, and I also want to add also for the guys that don't know about ATF, we'll be releasing a couple of walkthrough videos later in February. So you can look at our community page to get all those videos later on.
All right, and I'm really sorry we are at time. We're not going to get through all these questions. There will be a survey that goes out after the webinar. So if you have a question that wasn't answered, you can provide us with your email information and we can get back to you. And I will also take the unanswered questions and create a blog that will be on our releases and upgrades page on the community page. So really thank you all for joining and bringing these great questions. Also, just a reminder, we have some on-demand webinars that are available as well. You can find those on our live on ServiceNow events page on the community. And, we have two of our experts from the platform team here, Adam and Olinka. And if you want to get more information, their group runs Platform Academy sessions, and you can scan this QR code and sign up for some of those. So again, we thank you all very much for joining today. Sorry about the misinformation at the beginning of the webinar. Hope you got something out of this, and thank you for joining and have a great day.